After 1986's Trial of a Time Lord said goodbye to Nicola Bryant's Perry and brought in Bonnie Langford's Mel, the show had a setup that new script editor Andrew Cartmel was not happy with. Mel was to originally have left partway through season 25, but Cartmel decided it would be best if she left at the end of season 24. Of course, Mel needed a replacement, so two characters were devised to be used in two stories in the season, Ray and Alf. These would be used in the stories as trials for her replacement. Ray would appear in the third story, Delta and the Bannerman, and Alf, renamed Ace, would appear in the fourth story, Dragonfire. Ace would win the position as companion and would remain in the series until the classic series would end. She is returning in the centenary special in a few months' time, and as she is, I thought it would be worth looking back at all her stories. So, let's start at her first story, Dragonfire. I feel like the opening of stories is one of the most important aspects of a Who story, and this one is a cracker, whether it be the great crane shot, the dark and foreboding music, or the great set design by John Asbridge. Here the characters get told they're going to be frozen until Kane needs their services. Within moments we know we're going to meet Kane, and one of the people break free and run into the restricted zone. He then accidentally drops the gun he stole from a guard into a vat of liquid nitrogen. Then, the cold, dead-looking hands of Kane reaches into it and picks it up. From the off, Kane is an imposing villain, and this is down to Edward Peel's fantastic performance. He's just totally evil, there's no sign of kindness at all, it's great. As the TARDIS lands on Iceworld, we meet Ace, who is serving as a waitress at the milkshake bar, and then sitting next to her, Sabalom Glitz, played by the late Tony Selby. We'd met him before in the first part of Trial of a Time Lord, titled The Mysterious Planet. I really like Glitz, and that's probably down entirely to Selby's performance. He delivers the humour perfectly and makes him not only likeable, but a joy to watch. And as for Ace, well, she's already a better character than Mel and already companion material. She's already the character she will become in the following stories. Blanche, played by Patricia Quinn, then enters, explaining to Glitz that he must pay back a debt to Kane, and if he doesn't return it soon, he'll lose his ship. Glitz has to look for a treasure guarded by a dragon in the icy caverns beyond Iceworld. I admit this sounds like a lot of exposition dumping, but it really doesn't feel like that when played out. Using a MacBook Glitz won from Game of Cards, him and the Doctor go on the hunt for the treasure. However, Kane wanted him to have the map because he wishes to use Glitz in his own search for the treasure. The map has a tracking device in its seal. Then follows a great scene between Blanche and Kane, where her loyalty towards Kane is really pushed to the limits.
It's Glitz's spacecraft.
What of it?
It's just that...
Yes?
Well, if Glitz and the Doctor are as good as dead, I'd like the spacecraft.
Oh, you'd like the spacecraft, would you? When you first came here, you had nothing. You were willing enough to take my payment then. But now you want to leave. Perhaps you have memories of a home you can return to. Perhaps I should have put you into cryosleep along with all the others and erased your memories. Perhaps you need reminding. As long as you bear my mark, I own you.
You may have also noticed the brilliant music here by Dominic Glynn. Glynn had first composed music for Doctor Who the previous year, composing both the theme music and the incidental music for The Trial of a Time Lord. He returned for the first time here to compose the incidental music for the story, and it's a great score from start to finish. Anyway, back to the scene, where Kane then orders Glitz's spacecraft to be destroyed. Later, Ballage rebels against Kane and sends a message ordering for it not to be destroyed. This is really just the start of her rebellion. While Glitz and the Doctor are off looking for the treasure, Ace and Mel go to destroy an ice jam at the docking bay of Iceworld. This is the first time we see Ace's explosive of choice, Nitro 9.
It's just like ordinary nitroglycerin, except it's got a bit more wallop.
Then Ballage arrives at the situation and takes the both of them to Kane. Then proceeds probably the best scene in this episode, where Kane tries to convince Ace to join him.
Golden sovereign. Take the sovereign.
Don't do it, Ace! Please, don't do it!
You've heard altogether too much. Freeze her!
No, Ace!
Take the coin. Take the coin.
Right, freeze! Don't freeze, stand still and let Mel go.
You stupid girl. You think it's that easy to walk away from me?
Do you feel like arguing with a can of deodorant that registers 9 on the Richter scale? Run!
Then we reach the famous cliffhanger of the story, the literal cliffhanger. Apparently the scenes that made this make sense were cut due to time restrictions, so in the finished episode, he just stumbles up to the ledge and hangs himself off it with his umbrella. The resolution to it is almost more funny, as Glitz comes over and the Doctor just screams for his help. Back to that in a moment, but it's around here we meet the dragon. Ace deduces that it couldn't be a real dragon because it shoots laser beams. After Glitz and the Doctor make their way down to the bottom of the cliff, Kane dispatches Glitz's crew, which is frozen, to come and kill Glitz and the Doctor. Ace and Mel run off to try and find the Doctor and Glitz, and find the Doctor's umbrella hanging on the rail. Ace takes out her rope ladder and slings it down the cliff. This is another aspect of Ace I love. Her ingenuity is always exciting to watch. This is the point in the story where Ballage crumbles and turns against Kane.
He'll kill us. He'll find someone younger, and he'll kill us unless we kill him first.
How do you propose to do that?
With heat. Even here in Iceworld, it's too warm for him. I've seen inside the restricted zone. That's where he keeps his refrigeration unit. He has to return there whenever his body temperature rises too high.
She then goes to attempt to kill Kane, but instead melts his statue, making him angry, and then he leaves to kill her.
Oh, my dear Bellage. You know, I've been thinking of your request to leave me. You've been with me a long time now. I've grown very fond of you. But I've been thinking it over carefully, and I've decided. You may leave me.
Leave?
Whenever you wish. Go in fortune and happiness. I've been planning my revenge for 3,000 years. Can't let you stand in my way now I am so close.
By this point, the Doctor, Glitz, Ace and Mel have all met up and have followed the dragon to a small ice cave. The dragon has also, by this point, gunned down Glitz's frozen crew. Then the dragon activates a pre-recorded hologram message. It explains Kane is half of the Kane-Zana criminal gang from the planet Proamon. When the security forces caught up with them, Zana killed herself to avoid arrest. Kane was captured and exiled to the cold, dark side of Svartos. Then we discover that the dragon is in fact hiding the treasure, which is a crystal inside its head. With Kane listening in, we reach the cliffhanger, where Kane declares his victory is imminent. Soon, Kane orders all the customers to go into the Nosferatu, Glitz's ship. He then horribly makes it take off and blows it up with everyone inside. This is actually really horrific, paired with Tony Selby's fantastic acting, where you really feel sorry for him.
You can't leave me! Not after all these years! Come back!
The model work in this story is also great, as well as the pyrotechnics. Then we reach the climax of the story, where Kane offers to have the Dragonfire in exchange for Ace. They have no choice but to give him the treasure. Mel is forced to put it in the control circuit, and suddenly we discover that the whole colony is a spacecraft. Kane plans to take revenge, of course, but he discovers that he has been a prisoner so long that the planet no longer exists. In despair, he opens a screen in his ship and lets in light rays which melt him. This is brilliantly shot and really quite frightening. Glitz then claims Iceworld as his own spacecraft and renames it the Nosferatu 2. Back in the TARDIS, Mel decides it's time for her to leave. Then proceeds the scene which won Sylvester McCoy the part of the Doctor, i.e. his audition piece.
Before I go,
Real business time.
Doctor.
Well, if you must go.
Before I go, I'd just like to
There's
say.
no point, Mel. No point hanging around wasting time.
No, I'm not going until I've said my piece. I just wanted
There's
to
no
say
time,
that...
Mel.
Oh, all right, you win.
I do. I usually do.
I'm going now.
That's right, yes, you're going. You're gone for ages. You're already gone. You're still here. Just arrived. I haven't even met you yet. It all depends on who you are and how you look at it. Strange business. Time.
Then her replacement walks into view, and with the Doctor's offer to Ace accepted of her taking the scenic route back to Perivale, Ace was the new companion. But what adventures would she face? Well, she'd first meet a foe that were almost as iconic as the Doctor himself, with the season 25 opener, Remembrance of the Daleks. The story opens with a nice pre-title sequence with the camera starting on Earth and then panning back to reveal a great looking spaceship model. Then the explosive intro to the title sequence makes a nice cut off of the sequence, paving the way into darker and more mysterious stories influenced by the Cartmel master plan, but more on that later. Then straight after the title sequence, which I think is great by the way, we see the sign of Coal Hill School, the school seen in the first ever episode of Doctor Who. This is the first callback of the story, and believe me, it won't be the last. I really enjoyed this opening. The pace slowly builds up, leading to the brilliant scene in Totter's yard, where our threat is revealed to the audience, the Daleks. This is not only another callback to the first episode, but also to the season 22 story, Attack of the Cybermen, with the Doctor kneeling down by the soldier and saying,
His insides were scrambled.
the show's new direction was starting to become apparent. This whole scene is brilliant actually, from the dramatic Dalek deaths to Sylvester McCoy's hilarious line of,
Ace, give me some of that Nitro 9 that you're not carrying.
it's just a brilliant scene. The pace is somewhat frenetic, but it doesn't feel too fast. There are so many threads that are set up during these first few scenes, and one of my favourites is the girl. There's something obviously off about her from the first scene, and the moment where she says,
It's a doctor at the gate.
is truly chilling. But back to the Nitro 9, and more importantly, the explosions and pyrotechnic work in this story. This story is famous for them, and they really don't disappoint. There are so many moments in this story where something blows up and it just feels right, not too much, unlike Danny Hargreaves seems to think. I've always thought this story to be a great introduction to the show, or even just the classic series. This is typified in the great van scene, where we're told exactly what a Dalek is, and it also hints to the rest of the plot. With their journey back to the school, we meet the headmaster, played by Michael Sheard. Sheard was a somewhat regular of the classic show, with this being his 6th appearance. This was the final time he appeared in the series. We later discover he's in league with the Daleks. After the Doctor and Ace take a trip around the school, they creep down into the cellar where they discover a transmat device. The Doctor temporarily deactivates it, but then it hits him.
So no more Daleks can be transported through here?
Well, it'll slow them down a bit until the operator can repair the systems.
The operator?
Yes, the Daleks usually leave an operator on station in case of any malfunctions.
And that would be another Dalek?
Yes.
Stay where you are! Do not move!
The stairs!
But then, terrifyingly, the Doctor stands helpless at the door, as for the first time, the Dalek which comes after them flies up the stairs. I adore the design of both Dalek factions, not only the cast scheme, but the completely new designs, and also the use of the plunger attachments. Speaking of Dalek factions, the renegade Dalek faction's ally is Mr. Ratcliffe and his fascist group, the Association. In their base, they have a Dalek battle computer. Its design is obviously reminiscent of Davros and is somewhat set up for the audience to think that it is him. John Leeson, the voice of the computer, rewatched previous Davros episodes to recreate the voice. But as we'll discover later, this wouldn't be Davros, but a very surprising character. The Doctor and Ace take an ATR from a nearby van in order to destroy the transmat, but before they could get there, the Dalek from before comes out to surprise them, and Ace destroys it with the rocket launcher.
You destroyed it.
I aim for the eyepiece.
The Doctor then leaves, and this leads to the brilliantly directed cafe scene.
Ah, a decision. Would it make any difference?
Would make your tea sweet?
Yes, but beyond the confines of my taste buds, would it make any difference?
Not really.
But
Yeah?
What if I could control people's taste buds? What if I decided that no one would take sugar? That'd make a difference to those who sell the sugar and those who cut the cane.
My father, he was a cane cutter.
Exactly. Now, if no one had used sugar, your father wouldn't have been a cane cutter.
If this sugar thing had never started, my great-grandfather wouldn't have been kidnapped, chained up, and sold in Kingston in the first place. I'd be an African.
See? Every great decision creates ripples. Like a huge boulder dropped in a lake. The ripples merge, rebound off the banks in unforeseeable ways. The heavier the decision, the larger the waves, the more uncertain the consequences.
Life's like that. Best thing is just to get on with it.
A nice quiet moment for a loud story. The Doctor then goes to a funeral parlour where he goes to collect the Hand of Omega. Also here we have a reference to the first Doctor, William Hartnell himself.
Hello, Governor. Hey, somebody's come to collect that big casket. Yes, the Doctor. It's just one thing, Governor. I thought you said he was an old geezer with white hair.
The Doctor then tells the casket to follow him and it floats up and does so. The effects here really aren't bad at all. This then leads to the graveyard scene, where the Doctor talks to the Vicar while the casket floats into the hole. The Vicar is played by Peter Halliday, who played the character
Back up!
in The Invasion back in 1968. He had returned many times since then, but that's what I remembered him as. Then we see Mike receiving a call from Ratcliffe, and then the fight between him and the headmaster is really great.
Oh, what is the location of the renegade Dalek base?
What? Get off me or I'll wreck you!
What is the location of the renegade Dalek base?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Renegade Daleks have defied the will of the Emperor Dalek. They must be located and destroyed. And you are an agent of the renegade Daleks.
I work for Mr. Ratcliffe, the association. Who do you work for?
No!
Who do you work for?
Back at the school, Ace comes along to beat up a Dalek with her baseball bat. This is such an iconic moment in the story.
Small human female sighted on level 3.
What are you calling small?
Under attack. Mission impaired. Reinforcements requested.
This leads to the brilliant cliffhanger of Ace being surrounded by the Daleks. But let's rewind for a second and go to a very famous moment in this story, the Doctor Who meta reference. This is fascinating and really makes this story feel like a celebration.
This is BBC Television. The time is 5:15, and Saturday viewing continues with an adventure in the new science fiction series,
So back to the start of part 3 now, where the Doctor activates his device, which stuns the Daleks. I really like his line of, it's almost childlike, I love it. Then we see a callback to the first Dalek story, where the Doctor inspects one of the Daleks and a claw-like creature strangles him. This was first hinted at the end of part 3 of the Daleks, where under a blanket a claw reveals itself. There are so many nice character moments in this story, too many to mention. This is one of those stories that really needs to be seen to be believed. Speaking of character moments, I adore the staircase scene, which sets up the Cartmel master plan and the rest of the plot beautifully.
A long time ago, on my home planet of Gallifrey, there lived a stellar engineer called Omega.
Stellar? As in stars? You mean he engineered stars?
Ace!
Oh, sorry. Go on.
It was Omega who created the supernova that was the initial power source for Gallifreyan time travel experiments. He left behind him the basis on which Rassilon founded Time Lord Society. And he left behind the Hand of Omega.
His hand? What good was that?
No, not his hand, literally. No, it's called that because Time Lords have an infinite capacity for pretension.
Noticed that.
The Hand of Omega is a mythical name for Omega's remote stellar manipulator, a device used to customize stars with. And didn't we have trouble with the prototype?
We?
They.
And the Daleks want it so they can recreate the time travel experiments. But you said that both Dalek factions can already travel in time.
Oh, yes, Daleks have got time corridor technology, but it's very crude and nasty. And what they want is the power that Time Lords have. And they'll get that with the hand of Omega. Or so they think.
And you have to try and stop them.
No, it's I want them to have it.
Eh?
My problem is trying to stop Group Captain Gilmore and his men getting diced in the crossfire.
So, all this is...
It's a massive deception, yes.
Around this part of the story, we see the new Emperor Dalek design. The Emperor had last been seen in The Evil of the Daleks back in 1967, but as we'll discover soon, it may not actually be the Emperor. Soon Ratcliffe and his men dig up the Hand of Omega and takes it back to his warehouse, where we discover that the Dalek battle computer is in fact the creepy girl from earlier. This is a brilliant twist, and I remember the first time I watched it, I was genuinely surprised. The Doctor and Ace then sneak into Ratcliffe's yard to take a look around. Here, the Doctor temporarily deactivates the Dalek's time controller and places his calling card atop it. Let's fast forward towards the end of the episode, where back at the school, suddenly the Imperial Dalek shuttlecraft lands in the middle of the playground. It is so impressive and was done for real, not with a model. It's a great end to the episode, and I love McCoy's
I think I might have miscalculated.
which makes it almost funny. Now we reach the final part and the climax of the story, with the Imperial Daleks rolling out of their shuttlecraft and going to attack the Renegade Daleks. The Civil War begins. The Imperials deploy their special weapon, the Special Weapons Dalek. It's such a brilliant design, and I love the massive turret it has. With the Imperials then coming to claim the Hand of Omega and taking it back to their ship, we discover who the Emperor really is.
You have confounded me for the last time!
Davros. I should have known. I see you've discarded the last vestige of your human form. It's still no improvement.
Save your insults for the weak-minded Doctor!
Will you return the Hand of Omega or not?
Are you threatening me? If so, it is most unwise.
Every time our paths have crossed, I have defeated you.
Yes, it's a pity that Davros isn't in more of the story, but the time he is in the story, he is really well played by Terry Malloy. The Imperial Daleks then deploy the Hand, which then turns Skaro's son supernova, before destroying the mothership. Did Davros escape? Well, that's left up in the air. Back over in Mike's house, the girl comes in and kills Mike before essentially dying herself, because the Doctor convinces the Black Dalek, which is her, that it has no purpose because the rest of its race is dead. The story ends with Mike's funeral and the Doctor and Ace questioning whether they did good in the end.
We did good, didn't we?
Perhaps. Time will tell. Always does.
As mentioned in the previous two videos, I think openings of stories are very important, and this one is so brilliant, with Silas P tricking a woman, which leads to her death. The dialogue is absolutely flawless here, often rather morbid but wonderful. It's a pity Curry didn't write any more Doctor Who stories. Soon after the TARDIS lands, the Happiness Patrol come around and paint the TARDIS pink. I love it. The TARDIS looks so good when it's pink, and I like the Doctor's little exchange with Ace when they see it. Around here we meet Helen A, played by Sheila Hancock. She is one of the two main villains of the piece, both of which are brilliant, but more on the second later. Helen A is an obviously Thatcher Wright villain, and Hancock plays her fantastically. She is the leader of the Happiness Patrol, who makes sure everyone is happy all the time to disastrous effect. One of my favourite moments of her in part 1 is the prize joke scene, showing how bleak their world really is.
Why? What is the prize?
We're about to find out.
Congratulations and well played. Here is your prize joke. Did you hear about the Killjoy who won an outing with the Happiness Patrol? He was tickled to death. Enjoy yourself.
I see what you mean. The delivery's terrible.
The joke's not much good either.
You're right. It's awful. It's tasteless, smug, and worst of all, it's badly constructed. I mean, who writes that stuff?
I wrote it.
You wrote it.
I used to be her gag writer when I was Harold F. Then my brother disappeared. I went to look for him ahead of other disappearances. They caught me in the rocket port zone trying to contact Terra Omega.
and brought me here where I was regraded to Harold V.
The first part is very good at introducing the characters and Terra Alpha very nicely, and it doesn't feel cluttered or slow. Also in this scene we get a great line of "cross that line and you're a dead man," which is a wonderfully morbid and almost funny line. This scene is certainly a highlight of the episode, with Harold V's electrifying death, and the Doctor and Ace's great exchange. The scene proves an enjoyable watch.
Save it, save it! You can't run. You're not good to me like this.
I want to nail those scumbags. I want to make them very, very unhappy.
Then we meet the Candyman and his assistant Gilbert M, preparing to kill a Killjoy. Quite a fitting name if you think about it, with his fondant surprised. This is actually really horrendous, with the sludge resembling blood and the slow menacing build up to their death, making it actually really frightening. I like when the Doctor and Ace escape on the slightly rubbish go-kart and Ace gets captured by the Happiness Patrol. Susan Q, played by Leslie Dunlop, takes Ace to a side room, supposedly to take her to the Happiness Patrol auditions, but instead tells her how unhappy she is. It's a brilliant scene. The Doctor then gets rescued from being caught by the Happiness Patrol himself by Earl Sigmar, who I really like as a sort of proto-companion in this story. The pair go down into the Candy Kitchen, where we meet the Candyman properly. The voice is truly terrifying, and his dialogue is perfect. I love the final line of the episode too. I love the resolution to the cliffhanger too, where the oven has been left open so the Candyman gets stuck, and the pair escape down into the tunnel below the kitchen. Let's follow the Doctor for a minute and to the scene where he meets Helen A. This really shows McCoy's Doctor at the height of his illogical and manipulative powers. I really like this part of the story because multiple stories are going on at the same time, and then they finally intertwine by the final part. Speaking of which, I like the scenes building up to Ace and Susan's supposed execution, and then leading to the very powerful cliffhanger. But before we get there, it's time to talk about the sniper scene, where the Doctor sneaks up on two snipers and defeats them.
Hello. Get back. He'll use the gun.
Yes, I imagine he will. You like guns, don't you?
This is a specialised weapon. It's designed for roof duty, designed for long range. I've never used one up close before.
Let him go.
No!
No. In fact, let him come a little closer.
So you are.
Why? Scared? Why should you be scared? You're the one with the gun.
That's right.
And you like guns, don't you?
He'll kill you.
Of course he will. That's what guns are for. Pull a trigger, end a life. Simple, isn't it?
Yes.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
A life killing life.
Who are you?
Shut up. Why don't you do it then? Look me in the eye. Pull the trigger. End my life.
No.
Why not?
I can't.
Why not?
I don't know.
No, you don't, do you? Throw away your gun.
The Doctor then goes to the forum and finds a poster of Ace on the wall, advertising for the auditions. A citizen comes up and paints RI on another poster on the wall, and the Doctor fears Ace is also dead. After it is revealed that Ace has survived, we see a Helen A begin to crumble as people begin to turn on her. More on that element in a minute. But now back to the Candyman and his eventual demise. After the Doctor and Ace reunite, the pair go in to confront the Candyman, and after opening an oven behind him, he flees to the tunnel. After that, the tunnel creatures storm into the kitchen and fill the pipes, destroying the Candyman. I also like Gilbert M's amusing dialogue after seeing the Candyman's remains coming out of the pipe.
Close to the Candyman, were you?
I made him.
Really? How very interesting.
Only his body. His mind was very much his own.
I certainly don't recall the chap ever arriving.
He was born in the Candy Kitchen.
Whereas you came from Vasilip, if memory serves.
I was exiled from Vasilip. I brought his bones here in a suitcase.
Exiled, you say?
I made a mistake. I was working in the state laboratories. Without realizing it, I invented a deadly new germ. The disease wiped out nearly half the population.
Still, hardly your fault. Can't you just pack him up and start again?
Not this time. He's better off this way. The Candyman's gone.
Gilbert and Joseph C., Helen A's husband, then take Helen A's shuttle and leave her behind. After the Killjoys take over, Helen A tries to escape through the tunnel but runs into the Doctor and Ace. and also her pet Fifi dead on the ground. After this very powerful moment, Earl Sigmar and Susan Q make their goodbyes and leave as the Doctor and Ace finish painting up the TARDIS. But what would be the next adventure the Doctor and Ace would go on? Well, they come into contact with foes that were first introduced in the last First Doctor story, the Cybermen, in the 25th anniversary story, Silver Nemesis. Today, I'm here with Rory Guest, or Raston Productions, yeah. We're reviewing Silver Nemesis, which I don't know whether that's a compliment to me. Yeah. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I go by Raston Productions on Twitter. I produce audios and recently started a podcast-style series called A Talk With, in which I've had guests such as Jed T. Rhodes, George Gadira, Abby Louise, Jack Reeves, and Mr. TARDIS. I produce audios mainly, that's my main source of content. I was on the Comic Con panel with Jack Reeves, and yeah, I've just, I do my thing, and yeah.
He's very good at it, if you haven't seen his content. Let's get into the review.
Indeed.
So, Silver Nemesis.
Silver Nemesis, what an episode.
Yeah, the 25th anniversary story of Doctor Who. And actually, I hadn't realised until I watched it the first time that the first episode was actually on November 23rd. I thought it was like fairly close, because the thing that kind of annoyed me about the Five Doctors when I first watched it was like it's the 20th anniversary, but it's like 2 days after the actual 20th anniversary. I mean, when I first watched the Three Doctors, which was actually after when I first watched the Five Doctors, it was like it's January 1973, December 1972. It's the 10th. It's meant to be the 10th anniversary of the show. It's not on 10th anniversary.
I think it was definitely kind of a staple of the classic anniversaries that it wouldn't be on the anniversary day. Just a decision, but yeah.
I think that was, for the Three Doctors, I think that was kind of because it would have been more or less an entire year for another series of Doctor Who for that to be there. And actually, the part one of The Time Warrior is actually closer to the 10th anniversary than Three Doctors is. So we have that's new, and that's kind of cool. And obviously in the first part, a title card comes up, which is kind of weird. Like, I know obviously it comes up with part one, whatever, that always comes up. But it comes up with, what's it say, the 22nd of November, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's got this episode is very unique. I do love part one. I think it sets up a lot and got a great cliffhanger, which I'll get onto. But it sets up a lot of characters quite early on. It's relatively enjoyable. I do really enjoy it. I think you've got all the stuff with the Queen and her corgis, but one thing I really love about the start of episode 1 is that you have the Doctor and Ace just enjoying life. You have them enjoying their time together. You don't really get that with much classic Who, where you cut to them just kind of like they're just there enjoying a live jazz concert, and like with the basket there. It's a unique start to an episode.
I agree with you. It's it does kind of feel like if they'd have, obviously it wouldn't have fitted with the anniversary, but if they'd have put it on the end of season 24, it wouldn't have felt out of place really.
Yeah,
I feel like even McCoy seems slightly different.
And I think it's a great. It would be a great starting point for their dynamic, the Doctor and Ace, introducing them to the audience after Dragonfire. But I think I think it's a really great opening. I think it, and we find out that he launched the weapon space, and it's all kind of, there's a lot of plot-heavy details after like they get ambushed.
Yeah, so maybe it wouldn't feel right tacked onto the end of season 24 then, because it's all about. I mean, the Cartmel master plan is very much present in this story. Everything is. I mean, it's sort of in Remembrance. It is sort of there, But Remembrance is so good that it almost doesn't feel like you need to know all that stuff.
What I love about this story is the Cartmel stuff. I do love the inclusion of Lady Painful, who was expanded upon in extended media, and she was revealed, I believe it was in Lungbarrow, she was revealed to be a descendant, not a descendant, well, I think actually it might have been a descendant of the Pythia, who, the descendants of the Pythia are the Sisterhood of Khan, which explains where Lady Painful got all of her information and magic from.
Yeah, she's well played, I think. Some parts she does seem a bit more pantomime villain, but I don't know. Maybe it's her dialogue being slightly different. Because what's it in? It's meant to be in sort of, most of it's meant to be in iambic pentameter, which I think I said right. So she does seem different, and that part of the story I quite like. She obviously she's very, very different to the rest of the characters.
Yeah, it's certainly a unique. She's a unique character, and a lot of people say that this episode is overcrowded. But I think.
I wouldn't say that. It doesn't feel like it. By the end
of the story, it kind of feels like all of it kind of fits into place. I think. Then, of course, with the neo-Nazis, which are introduced in the first part as well, I believe.
Yeah, it's at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, and when they're introduced, of course, they're kind of the side villains of it all. Alongside the Sidemen, they're all they can be all classed as kind of side villains at the end of the day. I mean, the Sidemen are they don't really have that much impact on the plot at all, really. If you look at it, really. I mean, not neo-Nazis. It's really the main plot mainly revolves around Lady Painful and Doctor. That's where it all heads around, and I think they do a great job of kind of centering it around those two characters and the Sidemen are a great inclusion as well, I think. And I think that they do make for great battles between them and the neo-Nazis. I think it does set them up as really powerful.
Yeah, they're really good in this story, actually. For like you say, the small amount that they're in it, well, they are in it quite a bit, but actually doing stuff, they're really good. And especially the battle at the beginning of part 2, is really good. I think it's good that the neo-Nazis are in there, because sort of it makes the cliffhanger better, actually, because you think, oh, they're going to be the villains, and then all of a sudden the spaceship lands and out come the Sidemen, which is a very good cliffhanger. But that shot they use at the end is weird, like the one right at the door where the Cybermen are coming out, not the big wide shot, the close up, seems a bit like that they should have been further out. But I think that was because of the set limitations.
Yeah, and budget limitations as well.
Yeah.
I think, but it does make for an inspired and really incredible cliffhanger with like the Doctor telling Ace, "Don't thank them yet. They will kill you without thinking about it." Like, physical Ace thinks, "Oh, she's been saved. Oh no, wait, there's a worse threat incoming." I think, there's a lot to this story, and I think it can be quite overwhelming for quite a lot of people. But I personally do really enjoy it. I think, it's not necessarily. I think there are certain criteria that I follow for Doctor Who. If it's a good story, then it will have good Doctor companion moments. It will be enjoyable. It won't be boring. It'll have an entertaining villain, and by the end of the episode, you'll feel like you've earned that good experience. You've felt like you've been on a journey.
Yeah.
For a great Doctor Who episode, it has to be well written villains. Well-written characters throughout, and by the end of the episode, you kind of have to earn that ending. You kind of have to, feel like you've just watched something that, where the characters have progressed naturally. I think there is a difference between that and a great and a good episode of Doctor Who, because sometimes you don't have well-written characters. Sometimes you don't feel like you've earned the ending that you get. But it's still an entertaining watch with entertaining character moments and entertaining characters. I think this is a distinct mix of both. It's it's got great character moments between the Doctor and Ace. It's got good villains. To a degree, I would say that some are more well written than others. It's got a lot of lore to it. It's got and it carries that kind of well. I love the moments between Lady Painful and her supposed descendant. Is she supposed to be the descendant? I swear, she is.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be distant relatives, which that was a nice dynamic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think overall it was a decent watch.
Yeah.
It was never boring.
No, you couldn't say Silver Nemesis is boring.
Oh, definitely not. And I love the villains. I love the cast. I loved lore that it added to this show. And the final confrontation between the Doctor and Lady Painful is one of the best, just moments from Classic Who with him, saying.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, if you'd watched from the beginning of Time in the Rani, and then you'd watch this, and then eventually Fenric, where that kind of ends. That confrontation would have had a lot more impact, because there was a lot of stuff said in there which obviously a bit in survival as well, but more Fenric obviously about the chess set and all that.
It's very similar to Remembrance, this story. I think that's
I'd say that.
And I think Remembrance does do all these elements a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think even the neo-Nazis, that could be placed in Remembrance. I think a lot of the enemy agents and spies, and I think I think it does a lot better at everything. It is quite unfortunate that they're both in the same season, because if they were in separate seasons, I think it would have been a lot better, and especially since I feel like it needed just one or two more parts.
I'd say if this was a 4-part story, although actually the extended VHS version, wasn't that all an omnibus? I don't know, I haven't got it, but wasn't that all stitched together?
I'm not sure, I haven't seen the extended version, but keep an eye out for it. I think also Nemesis makes for a great plot device as well. Great.
Yeah, I like the they're using the same stuff that they do in the Green Death, don't they? That makes it glow white. Which looks spectacular actually, and especially that shot where the Doctor's stood behind the statue, and he's put the bow in it. That looks particularly good.
Yeah, and it's a good looking episode, even with some budget restrictions here and there, kind of limiting it here and there. But I think that's something you've got to get used to with Doctor Who. It's not something that you don't expect an episode of Classic Who to be flawless, special effects, or even set-wise, and I think that adds to its charm. I think this is no exception. I think there's great performances all round as well. I think especially from Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred, I think they...
particularly Sophie. I think she's particularly good in this one. She does kind of seem closer to her sort of Dragonfire type stuff. She does seem more like a teenager in this one, whereas in Remembrance, although she does kind of feel like a teenager still, she does feel like she's, all the stuff with the rocket launcher and stuff kind of makes her feel like slightly older than a teenager, if you know what I mean.
I get what you're saying, and I think another bit of criticism I hear a lot about Silver Nemesis is that you could replace the Cybermen with Daleks and it'd be the same plot. I feel like that's a kind of criticism that's lambasted towards pretty much every Batman story after the 60s, pretty much.
Yeah,
I once saw someone say that Earthshock could be better with the Daleks in it. Well, not better, but it would be the same. But I don't think that should.
It would certainly be interesting, but definitely not the same.
I think even if it was the same with the Daleks, I think it shouldn't be viewed as a negative just because it could be. I think that's a hypothetical situation. I think it's also having the Cybermen like the Daleks for the sake of the plot can make for an interesting Cyberman story in its own way. I think it's not necessarily the most negative thing out there, or a negative at all. I think just because it could be the Daleks doesn't mean it should be.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of the Cybermen, what do we think of the new paint designs? the paint jobs.
It's an interesting.
It's
choice.
interesting. I think I prefer the normal Cybermen in that scheme, color scheme, but I think the Cyber leader. I prefer his handlebars with the silver rings, because with it all black, it kind of looks a bit. It doesn't look as good to me. I don't know.
I quite like the black handles, but overall, I do agree with you.
Yeah,
I do prefer the original paint job, the less shiny Silver Sidemen. But I do quite like Silver Sidemen in this as well. I think it's great for a one-off. I think it really works.
I mean, if you look at them in attack, they are falling to bits. Like, some of them don't even have. I think is it part 2? I don't know. It's a 2-part story. With the Sideman that just walks over and he's got his head slightly crooked, and they just haven't the one with duct tape on it as well. That's you know, but yeah. So Sideman quite good in this.
What do you think of Nemesis as a character? Well, kind of a character, kind of a living weapon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's an interesting element of the story. Obviously, it plays into the title of it, but it's interesting. They keep talking about it, and it kind of reminds me of Pyramid to Mars in a way, because they're going on about it all the time, and then there's this big build up, and then you do eventually see it, and then it sort of plays into the ending of the story. So I guess actually I never really thought of that before. It is kind of similar to Pyramids of Mars in a way, in that sense. I mean, Pyramids of Mars is one of my favourite stories. So,
and I mean, the concept of a sentient weapon has, it's been around. It's been used in Doctor Who quite a lot. It was used previously in that season with the Hand of Omega being sentient.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, there are a lot of similarities to the Hand of Omega. There's a lot of similarities between Remembrance and Silver Nemesis. They still stand apart in their own right.
Yeah.
And they do have their differences. And I don't think them being in, of course, I said earlier, them being in a different season would, I said earlier that it would benefit them, but looking back in retrospect now, having them kind of in the same season does allow for some connection there. It kind of, when you look at it, it's kind of like, oh, this is a season about the Doctor kind of throwing away sentient weapons or weapons in general.
Yeah, like this season particularly. I mean, a little bit in season 26 sort of, but in this season he really goes out to destroy governments and like Inhabitants Patrol and go destroy races. In Remembrance he sets out to destroy the Daleks. In this, it's hinted that he probably does go out to destroy the Cybermen, but it's more painful.
The one thing about the McCoy era that doesn't get talked about enough is, we always hear about Ace's arc, but I think the 7th Doctor has a coherent arc as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That was definitely planned. I think a lot of people say that, he's too different from season 24 to season 26. But if people actually watched the series, season 24, the end of Dragonfire.
Oh yeah, Dragonfire he seems particularly on that road.
He's manipulated Kane into believing that he still has a species, only to turn it around on him and denounce his hopes, denounce that there was ever any possibility that he'd find his people again. And then, of course, you have, I believe it was in Paradise Towers, where he turns around to the guard and says, "Take my life." There are particular moments in season 24 that stand out as like him being. I think
that was really when McCoy got his own way that those moments came out.
Yeah.
Because he wanted the Doctor to be like that. If you see it in documentaries and things, he wanted his Doctor to be as it eventually became. Well, perhaps after, but he wanted it to be the darker character.
And then when you have like season 25, it's kind of the midway point, which is very intelligently woven into his arc. I think you have a lot of darkness in him in Silver Nemesis and Remembrance, but you still have the cosmic clown side.
Yeah.
While season 26, that's kind of when you get full on dark. You still have the more ridiculous moments, but then you kind of Battlefield, while you have those kind of ridiculous moments as well, it's about the Doctor being murdered. And
I know a lot of people say that season 26 is too dark. Well, I don't find it that way.
I think it is one of my comfort seasons, actually.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, Ghostlight. I mean, people say it makes no sense, but actually, I quite like it, and it does kind of in repeat viewings, it does make more sense, which is a sign of a good story to me. And so, speaking of the similarities between this and Remembrance, my main problem with this story is that as soon as we start the story, to me, it kind of feels like we're partway through one. Like, all this stuff is starting already. And I know in Remembrance, we do get thrown into the action pretty much straight away. But we do have the pre-titles, which maybe if this story did have a pre-titles, I mean, it would be another similarity to Remembrance, but maybe if this story did have a pre-titles, it wouldn't feel so much like that. I don't know what the pre-titles would be, but...
there's a lot to this story, and it does feel kind of... It feels out of place, out of order, kind of... It can be quite a lot to get used to with the constant escalations, even though I do like the amount of villains, and I like the amount of characters, I think it works well. I also think it could be longer, which is another thing that kind of adds to your thing, because like it being it kind of feeling like the middle of an adventure, if there were more parts, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there was obviously a lot of stuff cut from this, and there's a lot of stuff cut from all of the season 25 and 26 and 24, well, all of the McCoy era. There's a lot of stuff cut, and actually I haven't watched the deleted scenes. I really should do, but obviously all the deleted scenes were put back in for the extended VHS version, and I hope when this does eventually come out in the collection Blu-rays, we get an extended cut, and we get that one as well. Because I reckon, I don't know whether there was, I would assume there was quite a bit cut from the start, so there was a bit more set up to go off. But as you say, if this had an extra part like Ghostlight, I think it would seem to flow a bit better, and there would be a lot more time for characters to build up and villains to come in, but not feel like they've just come in, you know, the sort of woven into the plot a bit more.
What was I about to say? I was gonna I think that's the one thing I love. That's the main thing I love about the season 24 collection box set, is that we got the extended cuts. I think it really helps with all those episodes and makes them like 10 times better. And the episodes already were,
I have to confess, I don't have it. I need to get it.
Oh, you need to, because
I think it's still available on HMV. I shouldn't have said that, but I need to get it.
Especially with the Delta and Abandonment, because I do absolutely love that story.
I love Delta. Delta's really good. I really like Delta.
So, but with the extended cut, it's just all the more better, and that was me thinking a 10 out of 10. You couldn't get more 10 out of 10, but it's probably my favourite from that season, alongside Paradise Towers, which is also quite good.
Paradise Towers is good too.
I think I think overall I like Silver Nemesis. It's a good episode. It's enjoyable. It's got a lot of problems, but I think
you can look past those problems and enjoy the episodes. I'd say that as well. Out of 10, what would you give it?
Oh, I'd probably give it, I don't want to give it too high, but I'd probably give it a 7.
7? Yeah, that seems about right to me. 7, 6.5, 7. Yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, that's probably what I'd bring it out of 10. Yeah.
Well,
not the best, but it's watchable, entertaining, everything a Doctor Who episode should be.
Yeah, everyone seems to be having fun in this story, which is good.
Yeah. There's thoughts on it.
Brilliant.
Really much more to add apart from what I've said.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, where can everyone catch you?
So I have my YouTube channel, which is Raslam Productions, which I've already referenced in the beginning. That is where I put most of my stuff. I also have a Twitter, which is Wrestling Productions brackets my actual name, but you can just type in Wrestling Productions and you can find me. And I just put random stuff on there and just talk and promote projects on there. So if you want to keep up with what I'm producing, just look at my Twitter. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. Maybe we'll see you on the channel again sometime soon.
Yeah. I'm always happy to collab. I'm always happy to review episodes and be a part of this. So thanks for having me. It's been brilliant.
The story throws you right into the action from the start, beginning with the very catchy and Greatest Show in the Galaxy song, sung masterfully by Rico Ross, and his
"You ain't seen nothing yet"
delivered straight down the camera brings the audience into the episode. Then we see the only TARDIS scene in the entire season, and it's a cracker, with many comedic moments and callbacks to previous incarnations of the show. The most egregious being Ace crawling out through the door with Tom Baker's famous long scarf, complete with patches from his waistcoat. After a short scene, we cut back to the TARDIS, where a jump mail robot lands and attaches its cable to the console. The scanner then flashes up, advertising the Psychic Circus.
Yes, it's festival time at the Psychic Circus, the greatest show in the galaxy. So why not come along and have the time of your life with the non-stop action of its glittering circus ring? There's big prizes too.
No, don't believe it. Junk mail. We used to get mounds of this stuff through the letterbox, and now you're being bombarded with it inside the TARDIS.
Yes, junk mail is everywhere.
Whether you want to compete, there's a great time for you on the planet Seganax. The planet has easy access via our special polyportable landing base.
I like this part of the story, and I think what makes a good Doctor Who story is how well its exposition is passed about, and this one is brilliantly done. I love it. Soon after, we see Bellboy and Flowerchild hide and kiss, making the story feel rather different for the time. In the early 80s, J&T said, "None of that, thank you. We don't want anyone thinking there's hanky-panky going on in the TARDIS." It's a standout moment, but one which doesn't feel out of place. The dialogue here just rolls off the tongue and is really well delivered by the actors. After the Doctor and Ace land, we get many greatly composed shots peppered throughout. Here we meet a plethora of wonderful characters such as the Stalls Lady, Captain Cook and of course Mags. The last two join the Doctor and Ace and go down to the Psychic Circus, which is where you get the really crap first cliffhanger. Was it an editing mistake, a sound mistake, or was another cliffhanger planned but cut for time? I don't know. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I was a bit short on time for this episode, I apologise. Because of YouTube's awful copyright system, I've had to make these videos 2 months before publishing. So, to close, I adore this story, it's certainly one of my favourites. I love all the characters, especially the Chief Clown, and the colossal explosion at the end is a great ending. I will return to this story at some point in the near future to give it a full review, but next week we'll be looking at the opening story of Season 26, Battlefield. During the story, we find out that Brigadier Winifred Bambera, played by Angela Bruce, has taken Lethbridge Stewart's place due to his retirement. This was a very clever move by Aronovich, I think, casting a female and one of colour as this very high-ranking character, as at the time this wasn't particularly the case in many other stories, although it was starting to trickle in. At this point, the Doctor and Ace have arrived after receiving a distress signal. They hitch a lift from archaeologist Peter Walmsley, played by James Ellis. He is excavating an old battlefield near Carberry. As they arrive at the dig, they discover it has been taken over by unit soldiers. With the Doctor wanting to see the Brigadier, they get their IDs checked but are told to leave. This is where one of the soldiers tells Bambera that when Lethbridge Stewart was in charge, there was a person called the Doctor, who was their scientific advisor. And also that he has changed his entire physical appearance before. This tips Bambera over the edge, and she gives the Doctor and Ace a lift to the nearby Gore Crow Hotel and asks unit headquarters to recall Lethbridge Stewart to duty. At the hotel, Ace meets Xiao Young, played by Ling Tai, while the Doctor talks to Elizabeth Rowlinson, played by June Bland. She is blind but psychic and talks to the Doctor about the ancient scabbard over the inn's fireplace, an artefact found by Walmsley, and that it is an object of tremendous and mysterious power. At this point, it's worth pausing for a second so we can talk about the fabulous music for this story, composed by 7th Doctor era veteran Keith McCulloch. I mean, just listen to it, it's glorious. Right, back to the plot. Outside the hotel, Ace and Shao chat about explosives, and coincidentally, an oddly human-shaped missile crashes into innkeeper Pat Rowlinson's microbrewery. It is revealed to be a knight in full armour, not an android, as Ace initially thinks, and when his helmet is removed, he warmly greets the Doctor as Merlin. This is one of my favourite aspects of the story, as unlike many other stories, the Doctor just goes along with it, almost revelling in people calling him Merlin. This knight they have found is known as Anselin, and he is played by Marcus Gilbert. At this point, the story changes from a straightforward sci-fi to a historical sci-fi. Now, enough about the plot, as I'm sure I've confused you enough already, because I feel like I should use the rest of this review to talk about the man himself, Nicholas Courtney. This is his last appearance in the main programme. He would later of course appear in the 30th anniversary Children in Need special, Dimensions in Time, and his final appearance in the world of Doctor Who would be in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode Enemy of the Bane. The man's death was referenced in the series 6 finale, The Wedding of River Song. We don't talk about Cyberbrig, but let's go back to Courtney's first appearance in Doctor Who, back in 1965, in part 1 of The Daleks' Master Plan, playing Brett Vian. The director of that story, Douglas Camfield, remembered him when it came to casting Colonel Lethbridge Stewart in The Web of Fear. Courtney, sporting a false moustache, proved popular amongst the cast members, and the story proved popular with the public. So, when the producer of the show, Derek Sherwin, thought the show needed a revised format, he looked at the success of The Web of Fear, and thought that this Earth-based format would work. As a test pilot, he wrote The Invasion, and brought back the Colonel.
It's Colonel Lethbridge Stewart.
Brigadier now. I've gone up in the world.
During production, Courtney was asked if he would like a more permanent role in the series from season 7 onwards. He agreed instantly. He was in most stories from season 7's Spearhead from Space to season 10's The Three Doctors. From then, he would only appear in some stories until the season 13 opener, Terror of the Zygons, where the Brigadier wouldn't appear again for several years. He would return for season 20's Mordrin Undead and The Five Doctors, before appearing in Battlefield. The Brigadier would have died at the end of the story, but this was abandoned. The Brigadier's legacy has lived on since his first appearance in 1967, and Courtney always proves an enjoyable watch. He passed away on the 22nd of February 2011. He was 81. Hello everyone, and welcome to the sort of finale of the Adventures of Ace. Obviously we've got the centenary coming up, but this is the finale of the classic Adventures of Ace. I'm here once again with Rory Guest, and we are discussing the Ace Trilogy, as I believe it's called.
Indeed we are.
And we're also rounding off the character of Ace and seeing how her character has progressed from Dragonfire to Survival, and what we kind of hope to see of her in the centenary.
Yeah.
So, season 26.
Indeed, yes. Season 26, one of the best seasons.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I'd agree with you. Season 26 is a fantastic season. I don't get why some people say it's too dark. I don't think it is.
Oh, definitely not.
Because maybe, perhaps if you wouldn't have watched 25 before, it would seem a bit too dark, but I don't know, because I've watched 25 and 26, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, season 26 is dark, but you're right, it does gradually get darker from season 25, and I'd argue it just gradually gets darker from the beginning of McCoy's tenure.
Oh yeah,
because season 24 is known as one of the lightest seasons, but if you watch it, you'll notice the death count is just off the charts.
Unbelievable. Especially Delta.
I know, Delta, they just kill every side character and the villains, and the amount of villains in that one is insane as well. I mean, they just go out of their way to kill practically everyone in that one. So I don't think, in comparisons to the rest of McCoy, I think while season 26 is slightly darker, I think it fits right in, and I think it revels in that darkness to create this sort of, these great plots. And even amongst the darkness, you still have camp fun episodes like Battlefield.
Oh yeah, Battlefield is I don't hate Battlefield. It's probably my least favourite in the season, but I do like Battlefield because it's a bit like a rubbish Robert Holmes story. The dialogue is great. It's just the story is a bit. I do like Battlefield.
I think it was my first McCoy story.
Oh, really?
I think it was actually. It might be my second because I have like memories of a child being a child watching Remembrance, the Daleks flying up the stairs. But I think Battlefield was my most watched growing up.
Yeah, I think actually since the DVD release and of course now the Blu-ray release, I do have it over there. I should bring it over in a second. The extended cut of it I prefer. The stuff with all the new effects and the same kind of with Fenric. I've those two particular edits are of actually quite they're good.
I love the Fenric edit, but I do kind of prefer the cliffhanger sort of style because you get like the contest again, Time Lord.
Oh yeah,
cliffhanger, which I think just works as a cliffhanger.
That is a brilliant cliffhanger. I really love the shot actually. The shot of that at the end is really grainy in the original, but you can still kind of tell that it feels terrifying when you watch it. Everything is I think the music actually sells that better than the actual the pictures.
The soundtrack in season 26 is insanely
glorious,
and season 25 actually, and I'd also say season 24. The entire McCoy soundtrack is just insanely, just unfathomably good. It's indomitable. I would put it up there with the Murray Gold stuff, and season 26 especially, because a lot of those soundtracks have have a special place in my heart and my ears as being
the Battlefield soundtrack is just amazing.
It's just amazing. But like also the organs of like Ghostlight soundtrack is so ominous.
Marquez is really good.
Curse of Fenric is one of my favourites of all time. A soundtrack and episode-wise.
Survival is my favourite soundtrack of all time.
Survival soundtrack.
It's I can't remember where I watched it. I think it might have been on the making of Survival, where Dominic Glynn explains how he did how he made the music. We don't get enough of him. We don't get enough interviews with Dominic. He's in the I think it's on the Mysterious Planet making of. You only get like a 2-minute segment of him explaining how he made the theme tune. We want the full details. Is he on a bit more of season 23?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, right.
He was very much Colin's era more than McCoy's in mine.
Yeah, well, his soundtracks are really good. All of Dominic Glynn's soundtracks are really great, actually, because I really love the soundtracks he did on Trial. His theme tune is really good. It's like when I listened to it when I was a lot like ages ago. I thought, blimey, this is scary, but I could enjoy listening to it because you got all that sort of screaming almost sounds in the background, which is interesting. And I think it's a shame that it wasn't. It was only for that season and not for longer than that.
I mean, I do love that theme tune, and I'm glad Big Finish used it for 6 mainly. But I gotta say the McCoy theme tune, it's my favourite of the classic Who theme tunes, and probably theme tunes in general actually. But actually no, the Series 4 New Who theme tune is
Series
my favourite
4 New Who, yeah.
But 80s McCoy is very close. And I mean the Howl
is my favourite of all time.
That's the one I'm most nostalgic about.
That middle 8 is so good. I mean, I think the middle 8 is something that can never be done badly in the theme tune. Even the Delaware version. Even that's not bad because you can still tell it's that middle 8.
I completely agree.
But anyway,
yeah.
back to the season. So the soundtrack's brilliant, really good. The effects here are better than ever.
Definitely.
The computer effects are actually pretty good. I think Survival has the best effects out of the season, although, of course, Fenric is great. They definitely learned how to use their budget wisely on this season, which was a bit of a shame since it was the last one.
Yeah.
Because you watch Fenric and you can tell that's the one they spent all the money on the masks. Although,
then again, the Destroyer. Is magnificent. It's and even like they were supposed. There was a story that was told by Anthony Ainley at a convention about the cheetah people masks. They were supposed to be much scarier, but then they ran out of the budget. Like like when they would have the glowing eyes and everything.
Yeah,
it was supposed to be like they would have like a fang or something and like proper makeup, but they had
and I know that Andrew Cartmel wanted them to be a lot more human, and actually when he talks about it, it does seem to make a lot more sense that it would just be sort of the stage like the Master is and Midge, where it's just the eyes and the fangs, which I think could have looked a lot better. But actually, when people make fun of the masks of the cheetah people in Survival, I just don't get it. I think they look pretty good.
I think this is the season where even like its low budget moments work in the season's favour. Like I love the cheetah people and the two girls in Curse of Fenric. Very low budget, but it works brilliantly within the context of the story. I think it just works perfectly, and I couldn't tell you why, but I just say both just work amazingly for what it is. And I think
the two girls in Survival are really not Survival, Fenric. I mean, they are probably my favourite characters in that story, because although we got all the Hemovores and Judson and whoever else in that story, I think that those two are my favourite because they've got that horrible woman. I can't remember the name of her. I did watch Fenric recently. That stays with them, and she's horrible. And when she gets her comeuppance, it's like she deserves it. But then actually, when they sort of go into the water and everything. And they vanish. That's actually quite a scary moment. And I think they learned how to use the smoke wisely in this season. Because it's sort of very misty, and I think they mastered the art of atmosphere in this season, definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think my favourite character from Curse of Fenric, I'm trying to think of his name, the priest. What was his name again?
Wainwright.
Wainwright, Mr. Wainwright.
He's very good. I like him as well.
Love that character, and even like
that shot of him standing in the church, and he's basically, you can tell he's given up. It's a very, very good moment.
And the woman's name was Miss Hardacre, I think.
Yes.
Mr. Wainwright, he's my favourite character. Ace, I love Ace in pretty much everything. But also in Curse of Fenric, she excels in that story as much, and Ghostlight actually. Judson's great character. Of course, the Seventh Doctor is brilliant in anything and everything.
McCoy is so good.
Captain Soren. Was that his name? Yeah. And there were just plenty of other characters in that story. Like it's full to the brim of characters, and I love each and every single one of them. I remember
I watched Fenric with a friend of mine, and we at the beginning where she holds the baby, and she's like, I hate it. That's my mother's name. I thought, wait, is that? Because I'd only watched I had watched it once through before, but I'd only really watched the extended cut of it before. And I thought, is that moment now going to be a bit sort of predictable? You're going to find out that it is actually her mother at the end. I thought, is that going to feel predictable? But actually, the 4 episodes, because that bit is right at the start. It's like in the first 10 minutes of episode 1, and then right at the end of part 4, it doesn't feel like that at all. You know, it's a whole arc through the story.
It's a perfect throwaway because it's at the beginning, and they've got to set it up. They can't just leave it. You know, they can't just spring it on you like at the end. It's perfectly in character for Ace to call out a random baby who can't defend themselves, like saying, "Oh, that's my mother's name." When I say it like that, it sounds like she was being malicious, but you know, it was a perfectly, perfectly respectable and natural reaction for Ace to have. And then you start to get more and more hints throughout the story, and it's like seeded beautifully throughout the story. And then it kind of, when it culminates, it's amazingly done, incredibly done.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, Ace is the standout in this story from beginning to end. But also, one thing I want to mention is that this season it's got some of my favourite villains in it as well.
Oh yes, very good villains.
The Destroyer, Fenric, the Ancient One, the Master. The Master. That is one of his best.
I think
here.
Ainley here is possibly his best performance. Although I think he is. I think my favourite. I think probably my favourite is him in the 5 Doctors, because he's sort of in King's Demons. He's a bit more. He's kind of pantomime, but he's very good. He is very good in that story. Even though it's not great.
A lot of people point at the pantomime-esque nature of his master most of the time as a bad thing.
I wouldn't say that.
Adore it. I absolutely adore the cackling, maniac bad guy.
I think it definitely works. This sort of pantomime aspect of his master in this story, because like you say, he is turning or has turned into a cat, into a cheetah person. So he would be kind of going a bit mad.
He does kind of tone it down a bit, in my view, in this one.
Yeah,
I think while he does have his moments like when they're fighting, of course, he's got to cheat up. But I think he's amazing.
He's definitely got a sort of streak of Delgado in this story, or it sort of reminds me of that, because he's. He doesn't explain his entire plan straight away. It's sort of like him, sort of like the master in Terror of the Autons. He shows up, he does whatever. The audience kind of know what's happening, what the master's doing, and then right in that final scene, he's like, I'm. Buddy, getting the nestings down here,
Question for you: how would you kind of rank this season? How would you kind of, from best to worst?
What in terms of story?
Yeah.
Well, Survival at the top for me, because Survival has always been sort of personal favourite of mine. Then Fenric. Actually, Fenric and Ghostlight, I'd say, are fairly close for me, because they both have aspects that which I like about them. So I mean, Fenric, Fenric and then Ghostlight, but only because Ghostlight took me about a year to work out what the hell was going on. I
absolutely love Ghostlight.
Ghostlight's wonderful.
It's definitely a 10 out of 10 story. I think all of this season is probably the only season in Classic Who in which I rate all of the episodes 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. I mean, if I'd have to rate it, I'd put Curse of Fenric best. Survival a very, very close second.
Survival, I can't praise Survival enough, to be honest with you.
Probably third, Battlefield, actually. I'd
probably put
Battlefield over Ghostlight. I understand Ghostlight, I love Ghostlight, and it's still a 10 out of 10. But I just...
I see what you mean.
Has that kind of... It's ingrained in my mind. I could tell you everything that happens in Battlefield. I could tell you everything that happens in Fenric and Survival. Ghostlight might take me a bit longer. I have a lot of nostalgia towards Battlefield as well, and I think there's nothing wrong with that either.
Fair.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I just love it when kind of fantasy elements mix in with the sci-fi. When it comes to Doctor Who, I think it just really works.
I mean, the sets for Ghostlight are just spectacular. because at this point the BBC knew how to do costume dramas really well, so they had all the costumes, and then they had really good set designers who could just build the entire build the sets.
And of course, Ghostlight was originally going to be Longbarrow.
Yes.
Originally going to be the Doctor's origin story of sorts, which would have been made for an interesting watch, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad it wasn't there though, because the reason they didn't do that, A, for budget probably, but B, the main reason is that it revealed too much of the Doctor's origins. Straight away. It was because the plan had sort of the Cartmel Master Plan had started in season 25. If you'd been through those 4 stories thinking something's going on here, and then you got to Battlefield and thought, okay, something's happening, and then straight away, Longbarrow. This is how it happens.
Yeah, I see that. Although I would have loved it on live action, to be honest. I would have loved it.
It'd be amazing. Yeah.
But if I were to do it on like a realistic BBC budget, it'd probably take up an entire season.
Yeah.
It'd probably be like
the Longbarrow Adventures. Oh wait, no, that's gonna be a Big Finish box set. Isn't it?
Hey, if they don't make it, I'll make it.
Yeah, they haven't done Longbarrow, have they?
No, they haven't. They've done Cold Fusion, which does.
Oh yeah.
I haven't really listened to Big Finish adaptation, but it does. The novel incorporates a lot of lore from the V&As and Longbarrow and all that. So I have to listen to the audio to see it.
Yeah. So speaking of the new adventures, let's see beyond season 26 now and see what happens to Ace. So. You know more about this than me, from what I gather.
From what I've really read, from what I've really seen and heard of the V&As, Ace and the Doctor's relationship gets really pushed all throughout. I mean, it starts off with the Time Worm trilogy, which it's a strange one, that, because
it's the first one, so
it's the first
they don't really know how to do it.
It's also it's bad. I'd say it's quite bad. Not all of them. The first one, Time Worm Genesis, that's the bad one. The rest of them are brilliant. But the first
surprised.
It was written by John Peel, who did not like the Seventh Doctor, nor did he like Ace.
Yeah, well,
so
that's helpful, isn't it?
Figure why it was kind of a bad pairing to put that writer with the first Seventh Doctor story, and he not so fun stories that he actually actively tried to kind of jeopardize it, to stop it before it even started. Most of the story, it starts off with the Seventh Doctor using this kind of rubber to wipe his memories, and he accidentally does the same to Ace. And then throughout the story, it's just there's a lot of very dodgy stuff, very dodgy, the dodgiest of stuff you could possibly imagine. And it ends with the Seventh Doctor becoming the Third Doctor to fight the bad guy at the end. So he didn't like the Seventh Doctor, didn't really know how to write for the Seventh Doctor, so in the end ended up just by replacing the Seventh Doctor with the Third Doctor for temporarily. And then from Time Worm, thankfully it goes up from there. After Time Worm Genesis, at least the rest of the Time Worm trilogy, while disconnected, it's relatively good stuff. I'm gonna skip a few things, but the most notable story for Ace in V&As, I reckon, is her exit story, Love and War. Love and War is one of the best stories ever written for Doctor Who, in my opinion. It's Ace's departure, and it's the Doctor pushes her too much, and their exit revolves around Ace pretty much breaking down and ditching him. She later comes back a few stories later in Lucifer Rising, and from then on my knowledge really kind of runs out, but she ends up on Gallifrey
because
and there are various other things I know she doesn't love.
What do you think of her ending up on Gallifrey?
As an ending, it works. I do quite like it. Of course, she does in Big Finish as well occasionally. She was in Gallifrey Time more. I think it works. There are multiple endings for Ace, really. I mean, there's also a comic. What's the name? Josh Snares recently did a
Oh yeah.
my God.
Ground
Zero. That's
it. Yeah.
Ground Zero, and that's a beautiful story, and it gives Ace a very tragic departure with her dying, sacrificing herself for the Doctor, which I think also fits. I think that was quite a beautiful ending.
Yeah.
I love that story with all my heart. It's amazing, and Josh Snares did an amazing job with that.
Yeah, it was good.
Going to appear in Sarah Jane Adventures before it
it cancelled. Yeah.
Which would have been nice. It would have been lovely to see Ace back. And of course, she appeared in Farewell Sarah Jane recently.
Yeah, I saw about that.
Which was, once again, just a beautiful story. And her inclusion in that was wonderfully put together and wonderfully inserted into every other character, kind of saying their goodbyes. What else can I think of on the top of my head? Because there's A Charitable Earth. The Big Finish did Dark Universe, which had an old Ace meet Seventh Doctor. She's also been Tortured recently. She's her exits are kind of all over the place, and I love it.
They need to do, but I think they need to do a definitive Ace leaving story, because I get she ends up on Gallifrey and all that, but
if you really want a definitive story, I recommend Love and War. Whether it be the book or audio adaptation, I think both do it justice, and both are just. I kind of view them as my definitive ending, but I believe this show should never have definitive endings. I believe it should. It's kind of so convoluted, so all over the place, that everything is kind of multiple choice, and that's what I kind of love about Ace's departure. Is that it feels like multiple choice because you kind of have all these different endings to go off. I can't wait to see what the centenary adds, but I mean, even a focal point that was mentioned in like A Charitable Earth, was her timeline being all over the place, and I love it when the show kind of revels in that, when it doesn't restrain itself with its own rules, with its own timelines and continuity and canons. I think it would just suffocate if we hold it to that kind of standard.
Yeah.
Which isn't even a standard, it's the show holding itself to that kind of controlled standard. And there was also like Sophie Aldred cameoed as Ace in a fan film named Dr. Velocity, one of their episodes. And they wrote an exit for her as well, which is very tragic as well. I think, I love Ace, and I love how many exits and how many continuations she's had in all these different forms, and I just love it.
So Survival was the end for Ace on screen, well, apart from Dimensions in Time, but we don't mention that. But it was not the end for Sophie Aldred in the visual Doctor Who universe. That's right. Oh, do we really want to talk
about Search Out Space? Hey.
No. Well, we could do, but here we go. So, Sophie Aldred appeared in the BBV.
Oh no, I didn't
video.
know it was gonna go there.
But the BBV video of the Stranger series, More Than a Messiah.
We don't.
No, we do not talk about.
So instead of talking about Dimensions in Time, we went straight to BBV.
Well, I mean, we can get to Dimensions in Time in a minute, but this is before, isn't it? I think.
I'm not sure. But yeah,
let me check.
BBV. What's not been said? It's not the. I don't really know how to start. I mean, Bill Baggs, for starters, hate the man. Terrible creative, constantly, with how he treats the show and how he treats the properties within the show and the creatives and these characters, even how he kind of. And how he kind of exploited all the actors that worked with him, in that he paid them very little and they all ended up kind of going away from him. And the fact that he hired, he hired a nonce and Harper's a nonce recently. So he's not a very nice man. Don't really like him much. So, so
we can laugh at the crap he made in the 90s. Right.
Sophie Aldred isn't really playing Ace as per se,
She's not playing Ace at all. She's playing.
I mean, she
a
did
planet.
in his audios.
Oh yes, she did. What do they call them? Audio adventures in time and space.
That's the one, and it was the Professor and
Ace. Yeah, exactly.
Dorothy Ace. Yeah, it wasn't.
But literally called her Ace, which. I mean, the whole thing about that audio series was, you know, he asked for the license, the BBC said no, and he just made it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's of course the one thing that I can really talk about with Sophie in BBV is her and Colin Baker. Now, as soon as I mentioned that, I think everyone knows about the scene I have in mind. Now, Bill Baggs
it's not even the scene, is it? It's just a shot.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Baggs had an obsession with getting Colin Baker shirtless. Every film he did, every VHS he did, had Colin Baker shirtless, and I mean,
it goes. What is it? Is it in Zygons? Is it in that one?
I don't even bring up Zygons.
I mean, we saw plenty in Planet of Fire. Let's be honest, but
yeah.
Okay.
God, we don't bring up Zygons. But yeah, BBV, I don't think much needs to be mentioned, especially in terms of Sophie Aldred being in it, because she wasn't in many. I think the only really notable BBV production with Sophie in it is the one with Colin Baker in it, and that's nothing to do with Sophie. Sophie tried her best with what she was given. Just BBV in it.
So, as we mentioned, Dimensions in Time.
No. I actually like say that.
Here we go.
I like it for what it is. It's an oddity. It's, I don't take it seriously. It's just a bit of fun at the end of the day. And then there's nothing really to hate about fun. It's not really well written. It's just throw everything at the screen. And I kind of love that. It was a charity event. Would have preferred Dark Dimension.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because Rick Mail would have been amazing.
Oh yeah, he would have been brilliant, and giving Ace lots doing that as well would have been amazing. Yeah. But I'm still glad we got what we got. I'm grateful for that, and I think it was a lot of fun in the end.
Yeah, Dimensions Time. So the TV movie, obviously Ace doesn't appear in that, but how can we explain that? If someone didn't read any of the books at all, how can you go from Survival to the TV movie and think, what the hell has happened to Ace? Or how can you not,
And I guess there's not really that much of an answer to that, because of course we don't see it on screen yet, at least. But there are plenty of audios, plenty of books, plenty of comics. There are plenty of pieces of media that kind of fit in that kind of space, but if we're taking in the context of the time, if we're thinking about it like at the time, how would the people kind of thought? And I just imagine it would have been headcanon, really.
Yeah.
I think Survival is, at the end of the day, that's a brilliant ending for Ace and Seven. No, I think
absolutely.
That monologue at the end as well, everything about it is just amazing. But of course, tune into Big Finish, read the comics, read the books if you can, just anything really. I think every little bit of it just really develops Ace more than the TV show, and the TV show developed Ace a hell of a lot.
I would be surprised if there wasn't at least a Big Finish reference in the centenary, because I feel like it is going to be that kind of.
But then again, we kind of hoped for that with the Haunting of Villa Diodati, but didn't happen.
Yeah.
I hope this is more, I hope it happens this time.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, Stephen Moffat did it with Night of the Doctor, so and canonised the entire 8th Doctor audios. So, I mean, what Big Finish is there, and it is there to be canonised, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I think everything I don't even really agree with canon as like a term or, you know, something that can describe or contain Doctor Who. I think at the end of the day, every story is valid. That's how I look at it. Every single story in every different medium, everywhere is just valid. That's, yeah.
Well, to round off, so we don't have to open up another Zoom meeting because it's going to cut us off. What do we want to see of Ace in the centenary? Do we want her to be in it loads, or do we want her to be in it just a little bit? You know,
I would like her to be in it loads. I feel like she should carry on to the 60th, perhaps. I thought
absolutely, that'd be a brilliant idea.
She should definitely appear in the Rusty Davies era. I think she should appear in it loads. I think they should bring up Big Finish, maybe Fenric, a lot of season 26, maybe the Pete McPhee, collection trailer.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Yeah. I think it would be amazing for her to kind of still be developed. You know, don't just bring her in for one-liners or just to mention moments. Just capture the character and give her a good story. Do not kill her off, or I will.
Oh no, don't. Yeah, don't mess with her character. Just let her be in it.
If they bring back these classic companions just to kill them off,
what's the point?
I will get very angry, and I don't like getting angry at Doctor Who.
I see. I'm excited for Ace to come back. Obviously, that's why I've done this series. But I'm also excited for Tegan to come back. But it doesn't quite fit into my headcanon because I read the Resurrection of the Daleks novelization, and she basically dies at the end of that. So,
anyways, we should probably end this off now. While we still have time.
So where can everyone find you on social medias?
Right, very quickly, I'm Rory. I own a YouTube channel named Rasslon Productions. You can find my audios, you can find my podcast, The Talk Good Now, where I hopefully will get Isaac on that show as well. You can find me on Twitter, RasslonP, at RasslonP, Rasslon Productions. Check out my audios, Doctor Who Dark Days, I've got a new series coming out soon called Doctor Who 456, and I've got plenty more coming out in future, including a Doctor in Distress cover. Tune in for more on my channel, and of course subscribe to Isaac as well.
Thank you. Listen to what he says. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the series, and I hope to see you in the next video where we might be reviewing the centenary. I don't know. We'll find out. Bye-bye. See you, everyone.